Welcome to My Favorite CX, a podcast that celebrates exceptional customer experiences. To listen to today's, please choose from one of the following options.
Welcome to My Favorite Customer Experience, a podcast that talks all about people's favorite customer experiences and the why behind them. I'm Chris Holt from Holt CX Consultancy here in the UK, and I'm joined today by Georgia Holt. Georgia, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Georgia, as the name might suggest, is related. So Georgia is the finance director here at Holt CX, and also my wife. And outside of being a director of the company, you're a full-time secondary school teacher.
Indeed.
Teaching maths.
Indeed.
And has had a range of various different roles across a career. And we're going to talk a little bit about customer experience, but also a little bit about neurodiversity as well today.
Indeed we are.
So Georgia, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so as Chris said, I am a secondary school teacher. For those listening outside the UK, that is high school level, so 11 to 18. Done that for about the last 10 years. But before that, worked in the private sector as actually the customer side of things, dealing with suppliers on a very regular basis, working for 20th Century Fox, where I ran their building. So my experience comes from the other side, not providing the customer experience, but experiencing it both in a professional capacity and also in a personal capacity. Also, though, just thinking about education, we are now more becoming suppliers, and it's more like parents are becoming customers, which is something I was thinking about this morning, actually. We are now having to meet the demands of an external source rather than just focusing on education.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about customer experiences that you experience, and said we're going to talk a little about neurodiversity. Why don't you tell the listeners and viewers why?
Okay, so I was officially diagnosed with autism ADHD back in March. It means, though, that from a customer experience perspective, I've always had very strong feelings about how people talk to me and how people approach me, and which doesn't always make me the easiest customer to deal with. But I also think my experiences and neurodivergent experiences are something that everyone can learn from. So, for example, taking into account people's sensory needs in terms of things like hold music, for example, and stuff like that. Also, things like whether you're talking to a person or whether you're talking to a chatbot, and whether it's written communication. And just generally, though, if you think about neurodivergent people being hypersensitive compared to normal people, if you up the bar to meet that more sensitive person, you're going to, by definition, be having an enhanced experience for a neurotypical person, because just because you have to meet that higher bar, that's not going to be negative for anybody.
So if I think about that from a technical perspective, and the work that I do, for example, working with the analytical side of customer experience and making sure that various different aspects of vulnerability are added to analytical platforms so that you can flag for some of the FCA guidelines here in the UK, but also wider guidelines. You've talked about how there's co-occurring mental health conditions and various different things that people might flag up that might be considered vulnerability, but also from a neurodiversity perspective would be useful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, for example, co-occurring conditions, which might come into customer experiences, particularly if you're talking about having to phone people. Anxiety, social anxiety can come into that. Also, because neurodivergent conditions, particularly things like autism and ADHD, there's there's that experience that you have different days where you're capable of different things. So on a good day, you can pick up a phone, talk to a call center, absolutely fine. On other days when your energy is lower, when you've been exposed to a lot of people, it can be an effort even to pick up a phone and speak to someone, which is at time when you're in times like that. That's when things like chatbots are so much better, because you don't have to interact with another human being. So you have the co-occurring conditions, but then you also have things like within neurodiversity, within ADHD, within autism, your cognitive processes can be different and working memory can be different. So, for example, if you're on the phone to someone and they're giving you a lot of information in one point in time, then that can be very difficult to take on and very confusing. So, for example, for me, if someone says, we've gone through, say, car insurance or something financial, and they say, I just have to take you through the regulations, I have to take you through the terms and conditions, I can guarantee you 100% of the time I switch off at that point. I never listen to what they're saying, because I know I'm going to get so much information in one hit. I know I'm not going to be able to process it.
So you've got cognitive overload of that.
Yeah, it's too much information in one hit. I'm just not. So I just literally tune out and don't listen to any of it. Within 4 words, I've gone. I'm not listening to anything at all. And then at the end, I just go, yeah, okay, that's great, no problem at all, and move on.
So from a customer experience perspective, if that was, say, a live chat where the messages are asynchronous, so they're coming to you at a time of your choosing, or they're coming to you with a delay, there's not that instantaneity about it, you could then review those documents.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, whether I would or not, I don't know, but it does give me that opportunity. There is also the other thing of, we're not, sometimes, again, you're not that good at reading social cues. You're not that good at speaking, for example, in large groups can be difficult. And one of the other times, then it can be very difficult to know when to speak and when not to speak is on the telephone. So if you're in a conversation with someone, it can be very difficult if they give you, firstly, a lot of information at one point in time, or they ask you for a lot of stuff at one point in time. Firstly, you've got to process all that. So you need to know what you can't remember what you needed to answer from, like, if you've got 2 or 3 questions in one hit. And then also you've got the thing of, if someone's saying something to you and actually you realize that what they're saying is incorrect and that's the wrong information, actually having that ability to correct that, to know when to speak, to know when to interrupt, and you can end up in this weird situation where you're either talking over someone or there's a prolonged awkward gap. So having real clear demarcations in a conversation, or having real clear demarcations of, is that correct? But not having given someone 4 or 5 pieces of information, again, is really helpful. And I don't think any of this is particularly onerous. As I said, it's just having a higher bar, because I don't think clear, concise information with pauses in the right place is going to be a disservice to anybody.
Yeah, so it's almost taking that scripting that an agent might have, and instead of it being, say, 5 things and then check in, it's say 1, check, say 2, check.
I mean, probably, 2 is fine. It doesn't have to become completely artificial and completely stilted. But yeah, once you're getting to 4 or 5 pieces of information in one hit, then you are getting into, I can't remember what the first thing you asked me was. I mean, my working memory is particularly poor. You know that.
Yes. Yeah, you reminded me of something earlier today that was apparently something that happened 5 years ago that I couldn't remember. But
if I ask you asked me something you said 2 minutes ago, I won't be able to tell you what question you asked me 2 seconds ago. Yeah.
I think as well, actually, if you do break it down, as you say, if you raise the bar in how you handle customers to how you handle neurodivergent customers, if you raise that bar, it also makes it a lot easier to analyze in the back end of a contact center, because you're getting explicit answers to an individual question every time from a customer, rather than, hey, Mr. Holt, have you heard everything? Do you understand everything? We went through this, and this. If I just say yes, what I'm actually answering yes to.
Yeah, you've also got to bear in mind, people don't get on the phone and start a conversation with oh, by the way, I'm autistic, or, oh, by the way, I've got ADHD.
Exactly.
So your agents don't know who they're speaking to. And I have had times when actually, I will hold my hands up, I've been blatantly rude to people in call centers who, for example, I remember once years ago, I had an IT issue and my IT wasn't working. Now, I I knew I had a semi decent level of knowledge and I was being spoken to and I was being asked to do things, but there was a real level of I felt being patronized about it. And because of my neurotype and my sensitivities, I immediately went into fight or flight mode, felt I was being patronized, felt I was kind of being accused of being stupid, and went into and can be then again the other side of it is then get being actually quite aggressive and short and snappy with who's on the other end of the phone. And that's also the thing that you've got to sometimes realize is you are always going to get people on a call who are going to maybe be short with you or aggressive with you because they're not having their issue dealt with. But also maybe sometimes if someone's getting short with you or snappy with you when you're asking them for information, is it actually not because they're just overwhelmed and they've gone into that fight or flight mode and they're confused and I completely understand that's a really fine line and a really difficult thing for if you're just an agent who's under pressure and you've got so many calls to get through. You're not going to have to be you don't want to have to be an amateur psychologist and go, okay, well, why is this person snappy with me? Why are they? But actually, and again, this is with if anyone is being rude with you or short with you, to just sort of take that step back and actually almost, I think, go into a sort of taking a bit more time with them and listening to them and trying to work out why are they snappy? You know, sorry, have I asked you for too much information in one hit? Or is it because actually you're not getting your needs met? And there's a thing that I've been reading recently and it comes from education, but it can really transform into this. And it's, I see you, I hear you, I've got you. And it's that. So, for example, say if I was on a call and I was being really short and really stressed, saying, I see that you're not being able to answer my questions right now. And then saying, is there a reason for that? Or can I help you to make that more easy? And then when the person gives you the answer, say, oh, well, maybe it's too much. I can't answer all those questions in one hit, or I don't have the information to hand, or I don't feel you're listening to me and you're not addressing the problem that I actually have, then saying, I hear what you're saying to me. This is what the problem is. Don't worry. I will deal with that for you. I will ask you more straightforward questions, or I will try and address that issue. And that's where I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I'm validating you as a person, not just as a number at the end of a phone line. And I've got you. I'm going to take you kind of in my hands and I'm going to deal with that for you. I'm going to make that more straightforward. I'm going to make that a more pleasant experience for you.
And that is all dependent on a couple of things there. So there are some things that we can do with technology now within the contact center space. So firstly, you know, with the amount of data that companies take on with customers now, there's no reason why there couldn't be a flag alongside vulnerability, alongside if someone's a VIP customer and their spend and all kinds of other information, that there isn't a neurodiversity flag or a neurodivergent one even. So there's all that kind of stuff that then you could then form into what we do with the agent. Maybe we route you as a caller to our most capable agents, our ones that have the best effective questioning scores, all that kind of stuff. And I think though, you also need a culture of empowerment. So you talked there about, I hear you, I've got you. That doesn't work if the agent is being told, oh, I need to wrap every call up in a certain amount of time and you can only ask these questions. That duty of care, that level of care only happens if those agents have been told, if you need to, you can change the question or you can do more with this customer. No, because that's how you can turn around that call that might be seeming like it's a negative sentiment, but it's not going well, by being able to maybe put an arm around the customer. But if you've got the data there as well that says, Mrs. Holt, neurodivergent, that already gives your agent some clues.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of points I want to make out of that, though. The first one is everyone wants to be seen as a human being, whether you're neurodivergent or whether you're neurotypical, whomever you are. Everyone wants to be seen and heard and validated as a human being. Nobody wants to think that they're just a number or a name on a piece of paper. The minute you pick up that phone, and you speak to someone, everyone wants to be treated like they matter. I think that's just a fundamental thing in life. In anything in life, everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to feel that they matter. Everyone wants their experience to count.
Yeah.
I mean, and nobody wants to feel that they're just something on a tick list. And particularly if you are phoning someone with a problem, whatever that is, you want to know that that person on the other end of the phone almost cares. Not cares on a deep level, of like they're going to go home and cry because your experience has been that awful, but that they care in a professional way.
Yeah.
They want to solve that problem for you, because they empathize with what you're going through, even if it's just, my washing machine's broken. It's like that they get that that's a massive inconvenience and that you want it solved as quickly as possible. So there is that. The other thing is, I get what you're saying about a neurodivergent flag. And in an ideal world, that is great that people would see that and that they will deal with that with kindness and empathy. However, that is not necessarily what you're going to get.
No.
And, there is, the more you go into the neurodivergent community, there are so many levels now of what that exists on. And there are so many contradictions in what a neurodivergent person is. And one of my things personally, and this obviously because we are married, is being infantilized. And I have very deep contradictions as a person in that I do like things that people feel are inherently childish, but I also am fiercely intellectual. I know it's a risk of sounding big-headed. I know I'm intelligent. I know I'm articulate. And when I have a conversation with someone on the phone, I want to be treated like an intelligent, articulate. That was kind of making my own arguments sound wrong, but I want to be treated like an intelligent, articulate adult. I don't want to be talked at like I'm a child. And if you and I now live in this bubble where we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of education about autism, about ADHD, about what it is to be neurodivergent. And I think when you're in that bubble, you forget that not everybody is, and not everybody has that same level of knowledge and experience. And therefore, if you're flagging that someone has a neurodivergent label, if you want to call it, so they're autistic or they're ADHD or they're dyslexic, and the thing is, how far down the list do you go? What are you putting on that they're then going to speak to that person with a preconceived notion of who they are and what they are? And that could get you into quite sticky territory, I think. And you could end up unintentionally offending people.
Yep.
Because your agents aren't necessarily going to know or have experienced that before. And that becomes a far more difficult thing to deal with.
So it's a whole nother level of training and understanding as well to potentially bring into the contact center. Well, what we'll do there, George, is we will take a break. We'll place our listeners and viewers on hold for a moment so they can chat to Holty, our customer experience bot, which I'm sure you'd be a fan of. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about one of your favorite customer experiences.
Okay.
Your call is important to us. Please hold, and you will be connected to your next favorite customer experience shortly.
Welcome back to my favorite customer experience. My guest this week is Georgia Holt, and before the break, we were talking about neurodiversity within customer experience and some of the things that are great, some of the things that are more difficult. George, why don't you tell us about a favorite customer experience that you've had?
Okay, so we're going back. You're going to have to help me with some of the details now. When did we went to Holland? In April. So this is also obviously a customer experience that you have experienced with me because we were together. So back in April, we went to Holland to go to a live gig. Now, as much as I love live music and I enjoy live gigs, and if you have a seat, that's great. When we go to gigs where there is standing, it's never been a particularly positive experience for me. Not just because I'm only 5'4" and I can't see over people a lot of the time, but I always used to pick out one or two people in the crowd that I used to really, really irritate me. And these would just be nice people living their lives, enjoying a gig, maybe having a dance and whatever. But I would absolutely fixate on these people and, to put it bluntly, kind of want to kill them. And I realised once I got my diagnosis and I learned a lot more about it, I realised the reason was I was completely overwhelmed by the environment that I was in. There was people around me. I'm very protective of my personal space bubble. There was people around me. I was here to see a gig, so I needed to make sure that I saw it. And basically the whole experience was putting me into fight or flight mode. And that fight or flight mode was being channeled into just a couple of people really irritating me. But it was a general overall experience, so that really detracted from the enjoyment of the gig. Now, obviously, accessibility is becoming a much bigger thing. And was it you that saw on the website that they had an accessibility thing at the venue where the gig was?
The venue's the Tivoli over in Utrecht. So really modern venue, got loads of different kind of concert halls in the same place. And on their website, they had a great section on accessibility. And actually what we'd seen, a lot of UK venues talk about disability access, and that's all accessibility means to a lot of places still at the moment.
Yeah.
But they said, look, if you've got any sensory needs, get in contact. And this was the night before the gig that we plotted this. So I was like, right, I'll send an email, but very low expectations.
Yeah. And so you sent that email, didn't you? Explained that I was ADHD and could we take advantage of their offer to have a tour of the venue before, because basically they'd outlined that they would take you on a tour of the venue. So basically we'd go on a tour of the venue, see what was there, and obviously that would mean that when we went, I would have in mind where I'd want to stand or where I'd want to be within the venue itself. And that was all our expectations were, wasn't it? That we'd go along and we'd see the venue. I'd be able to then know in my mind where I wanted to be within the venue itself, because I like to stand to the side or near the back, and then we could do it. Did they emailed you back? I think it was within about half an hour.
Yeah.
It was super, super quick. And we're like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Would you like to come at 2:30 tomorrow or whatever the time was? So basically we went along the next day at about 2:30, and they were great. They were like, you cannot actually go into the auditorium itself because there was a sound check going on. But they took us in, they took us on a tour of the venue. They showed us a picture of the room, a really big picture of the room, so we could still see exactly what the setup and the structure was. They took us to, they were basically told us that if we wanted, rather than having to go up the stairs if they were crowded, that there was a lift that we could use, which gave sort of back access into the venue, so we didn't have to go in with the crowds of everybody else. And that when we arrived that night, there would be people in red tabards that would sort of help us and escort us to the venue. And then they asked basically about my mobility, didn't they? And if I was able to sort of stand for the whole thing. And I said, I don't have any problems with stairs, don't have any problems with mobility. It's literally crowds, people in my personal space, and that is kind of the issue. And I said, but I mean, standing for long periods of time isn't ideal, but you go into a gig, it comes with the territory. And without us even asking, they said, okay, we'll see, and if there's an availability, we'll get you a chair. And they basically went to their booking desk, checked the availability in the disabled, in inverted commas, seating area, and there were still spaces available. So basically they provided us with, when we got to the gig that night, someone met us and we were taken up to, it was right at the back of the venue, but that was fine because it wasn't that large a venue and we still had an excellent view, and we were just in a small part where I was given a sort of high back stool. There was me and you, and then there was another gentleman who arrived, which again had obviously hidden disabilities. He was with his mate, he was given a chair, and there was basically the four of us in this one bit of the at the back of the I say arena, it wasn't arena, but the hall. And then there was a few people who chose to stand in that area behind us, but that was it. And it was just immense from start to finish. When we went in and we had the tour, they were so kind, they were so helpful. Then they absolutely went to the next level of then speaking to me and finding out what my needs were, and then providing me with a solution that was way beyond anything I'd expected or anything that we'd asked for. And the gig itself was categorically the best experience I've ever had at a gig, because I had my own space where I could absolutely enjoy myself. I was able to sit down when I needed to, I could stand up when I needed to. And it's that thing of I genuinely felt seen and heard, and to the point where there was a little bit of imposter syndrome to begin with, of like, do I actually need this? Am I asking for something that, I don't need? Am I now just, thinking, oh, I'll take a chair and it'll be great? But then when I compared the level of experience that I had compared to when I've been in gigs previously, it was like, oh, wow, this is what it's meant to be like. This is how much fun it's meant to be. It's almost that thing of, it's like if your eyesight's bad and you don't have glasses, you could kind of cope and you don't realize, and then someone puts a pair of glasses on you and you go, oh my word, I can now actually see. It was like that. It was like, wow, this is the fun that other people have at gigs and experience. So yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. It just made the experience so much better than any experience at a gig I've ever had before.
So I think we can probably answer this on what made it exceptional was just the way you were catered for. I mean,
yeah.
When I sent that email to the venue, I didn't expect anything back. There have been venues in the UK that I've emailed on a similar thread, and the gig has passed and I still don't have a reply.
Yeah.
So, although we won't focus on that one, but, the fact that they had someone on the day of gigs checking and saying, right, here's your time slot. Can you come in at this time? We'll show you the venue. There were special lifts. There were, there was someone at every level of the venue that was available to help as well.
Yeah.
Which was really exceptional.
And they must have had about 4 or 5 gigs going on.
Yeah.
And there must have been, what do you reckon, about 6 or 7 people in red tabards. There were so many people that they were helping and accommodating with. Some had obvious disabilities. There were people with wheelchairs and people with sticks. But then they said the bloke sitting next to me, he had no visible disability, so they catered for the whole gambit of like needs that people had. And they, even that when they were really busy, they were just so helpful and so there for you. And they were like, even if you had to wait, they were like, do you mind waiting? And it was like, no, that's fine. And then they'd come back and say, sorry, we haven't forgotten about you. You know, we just need to sort this person out first or whatever. And it was just a really, really positive experience from start to finish, and an experience that, you know, when you're kind of singling yourself out as having needs, you know, you can almost be said embarrassing, and you'll almost want to apologize for it. And there was none of that. I didn't feel in any way that I was being made to be a burden or asking for something that I shouldn't have had, you know, because I said it is completely invisible. You know, that the thing about things like whether it's neurodiversity or whether it's just anxiety because you suffer from an anxiety disorder, it's completely invisible. You know, I've been in places and had panic attacks and nobody would have known. You know, you could have been having a conversation with me while I was having a panic attack and it would be so internal that you wouldn't even know. But there was no questioning about, you know, it just didn't even enter their minds that it might not be a valid experience for me to need to have that support, which was amazing.
I think I can probably answer the final one on how's it influenced behaviours. I think one, we've looked at, well, if there are future gigs in Utrecht, given our proximity to London, it might make more sense to have another lovely couple of days in Utrecht and visit the Tivoli. I think also, though, that experience has meant you're not afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, because it was so positive. I am now like, yeah, I will ask for help. And it's the more positive experiences you have when you ask for help, the more likely you are to ask for it, which I think can only be a good thing. It's like, obviously, I've got my sunflower lanyard, I've got a hidden disabilities card, and airports are one of the big things that obviously say that they recognise that. And our experiences in airports has been really diverse. Some airports are proactive about it. Some of them are like, well, we won't question you. And others, you're like, well, they don't even acknowledge that there's a difference. But the positive experiences mean that I am now more likely in a situation where people are proactively offering that support. He's giving me the confidence to ask for it more.
Yeah.
Which is massive, because obviously diagnosis gave me more confidence to ask for support, but pre-diagnosis I would struggle to the end of the earth and I would never ask anyone to help, because it was like, well, everyone else is coping.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with me that I can't, so I'm not going to ask for help and highlight even more what a failure I am. Since diagnosis, it's become a bit more like, yeah, well, there are reasons why I feel like this, so I will ask for help. And now the positive experiences, and it's not just the positive experience of asking for help, it's the positive experience that follows on when you've got that help. So like that gig being the best gig in terms of enjoyment that I've ever been to, it means that you realise that you do actually need that help, because there is that thing of you don't live in anyone else's head. So you always assume the experience that you have is the same experience that everyone else is having. And it was only sort of when I started to investigate and go down the road of diagnosis that I suddenly started to realise that not everyone does feel like that. Not everyone's experience is that. Not everyone does struggle with this. Not, you know, and that's like, well, actually, why should my experience not be on the same level as everybody else's? Why should it not be as stressless as everybody else's? Why shouldn't it be as enjoyable as everybody else's? Because actually everybody else wasn't standing in that room wanting to kill everyone around them because they were completely sensory overwhelmed. You know, they were just having a great time. But I didn't realise that.
Yeah.
You know, I thought they were probably feeling about me the same way as I was feeling about them.
Certainly not at a Father John Misty concert. So, Georgia, we'll wrap there. Normally, I would ask where can people find you, but it's generally in a school.
It is. Yeah.
So, thank you very, very much for joining me in the office on a overwhelmingly hot day, and for telling us all about the fantastic experience that you had over in Holland at the. I'm going to redo that. And for telling us all about the experience you had over in the Netherlands at the Tivoli in Utrecht. Top marks to them for providing exceptional customer experience.
Do they get a tag in this?
I will definitely tag them. Yeah, absolutely. We'll tag them. And join us in a couple of weeks for the next podcast. Likewise, if you like what you heard, want to see any technical demonstrations, normally I'd provide a bit of technical insight on that experience, but it was pretty clear it's a very empowered organization that knows what they're doing around accessibility. So thank you very much for joining us. Check out the YouTube channel for any other content, and thank you for listening to my favorite customer experience.
Can I do the outro now?
No, we've got an outro recorded. We've got a proper outro.
Okay, and are you going to put the outtakes on?
The outtakes will go somewhere.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining us, Georgia.
No, you're very welcome. It's been a long journey.
Thank you for listening to My Favorite CX. Your listenership is important to us. On your keypad, please press the number between 1 and 5 to rank how much you've enjoyed your experience.